All right, everybody ready?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was asleep 7 minutes ago. I'm fucking ready.
This is going to be great.
All right, we're
He's
recording.
high and sleepy.
We're recording.
For 3 minutes.
Yeah, for 3 minutes now, kid.
Okay. 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 Let's do it.
Oh, shit.
Welcome to Hey, did you ever see that movie? I'm your host, Des, and as always, I'm joined by my pod wife, Dylan.
I've seen these flowers all over. They're growing like parasites on other plants all of a sudden. Where are they coming from?
You're not my wife. You're not my wife. Tony, there's something wrong. She's not right. And joining us again, the podcast with a degree in terror, original flavor Tony.
Hey, how's it going?
Tonight, we will be discussing the 1978 sci-fi movie, Invasion of the Body Snatchers, written by W.D. Richer and Jack Finney, directed by Philip Kaufman, starring the mighty Donald Sutherland, the beautiful Brooke Adams, the quirky Jeff Goldblum. And as always, this podcast will contain spoilers, so if you haven't seen the movie, fucking take a nap, don't sleep too long, and then go watch the listen up. Okay, sorry. Sorry.
Wow. What
yes.
did we do? Make it 4 minutes in? Not even 1 minute in.
We're good. We're good.
Okay.
Yes, so thank you to everyone who is joining us on YouTube in particular. For some reason, the show is taking off on YouTube, which is wonderful. So if you are listening to the show on YouTube today, take 2 seconds now, stop the podcast, go hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and comment. Give us your opinion. Say anything. Say fuck you. Who cares? Doesn't matter. Makes fucking YouTube think you're watching the show. And then they'll push it out to other people who won't like, comment, or subscribe. Okay, guys.
Like an ice cream man. Like an
Yeah.
ice cream.
Yeah. I ate weed ice cream before the show. So
This is going to be fun.
okay. Yeah, just hang on.
Just let it
All right.
happen.
It just
Strap in. We're
just
on it.
lay back and let it happen. It's easier this way. Stop fighting it. Yeah, I know. I've been rocking that.
I need a
joke.
bear. I need a bear.
Okay, let's do a quick opening thought on this one. So I saw this movie in the theater when I was a kid. I must have been about 8 or 9 years old, and it stuck with me my whole life because I mean, seeing this movie at such a young age, it really was pretty impactful, especially the end. You know, not to give you a spoiler, but just unbelievable. I was super excited to watch it for the podcast. And in fact, I watched this one twice in a row, and I actually enjoyed it more the second time. And having lived in San Francisco back in the 80s, it just made this movie that much more appealing to me. I mean, I love movies that are shot in San Francisco because it kind of brings me back to that time in my life. And with everything in this movie being shot on location and they didn't make any sets for the movie, it really brought me back to my time in the city. So for me, that's the charm of this. And I really loved it. So just bear with me on this. I just wanted to throw this by you guys. I'm not saying that these are necessarily going to be things that other movies stole from this, but just similarities that I put between this and other horror sci-fi movies. So, how about this? The aliens in this movie, 4-year lifespan, no emotions, cannot reproduce. This is Blade Runner, right? Even though the alien is in control, there's still a tortured echo of the person trapped deep inside. Dawn of the Dead, that's why they go to the fucking mall. Get Out, the movie. Don't Fall Asleep, cut the Nightmare on Elm Street. The Pods goes back to the Alien movie. Sleep, Obey, They Live. Basically everything from the movie The Faculty. You can't tell who's infected at the first glance. The Thing. I mean, it's amazing how much they packed into this little 70s movie.
I would say that part of that might be because it's playing on very human fears. And of course, when you're making movies to scare people, what are you going to tap into? Stuff that we find scary. Not being able to sleep is terrifying because how else are you going to function if you can't sleep? Stuff like that. Or having your loved ones replaced without you knowing. The Thing and
Yeah.
this, like, terrifying. That's terrifying to
Yeah.
me.
Yeah, not knowing if your, significant other is, an alien or themselves. And the character building focuses on their personalities and specifically in this movie, their idiosyncrasies, kind of like with, her flickering her eyes and stuff, which was brilliant because it raises the stakes on what would ultimately be lost by these characters in this movie that I loved and cared about, all of them. And finally, this is my question, to you guys. Would people trade their free will to not feel pain, anxiety, fear? I mean, people take drugs, they drink to numb these feelings and to numb their trauma and anxiety. So I just thought this was a really thought provoking movie. And, it just tapped into things that are still relevant to this very day, you know? So that's my rant, but you can see where I'm going with this movie. Tony, what are your opening thoughts? And had you seen this before preparing for the podcast?
I did. I saw it in the theater when I was 8 years old. I went with my best friend. My parents just dropped us off on a rainy day. Remember it seriously like it was yesterday. Um, as soon as the pod people started hatching, the scene of my friend ran out of the theater screaming and wouldn't come back in. So I sat there and had to watch it alone because I was terrified by myself to even get out of the seat. I mean, it messed me up. Um, and watching it again as an adult, now, I haven't seen it in a good, Jesus, at least I'd say about 15 years. I loved it. I sat with it a couple of nights ago, and then I sat with it last night with my son. I put my like, all right, let's see how it holds up through generations. The paranoia, the exhaustion, all the things that adult seeing it through an adult's eyes, it's a whole different level of just a science fiction run around movie. But my son actually got it, which I was shocked. Like he tapped into the, well, how do you know your friend's not your friend? It's like that's terrifying.
Yeah.
It's like I'm telling all my secrets, I'm telling everything to my friend, and it's not them, and they're just trying to make me go to sleep and be like one of them. It's like, what if you don't want to do that? Like, I don't want to give up my will. It's like, look at you, Mr. 12-year-old. Good for
Yeah.
you.
Did you have trouble putting
Um,
him? Did you have trouble putting him to bed?
no, no. But the next day he did wake up. He's like, Dad, I can't get that movie out of my head. I'm like, then it was a good movie.
Oh, so
And
good.
it's funny because the original was playing on MGM today.
Oh, really?
Oh,
So it was
wow.
like we sat with it for a little while. Yeah, it was like that's perfect timing. No, but I love this movie. And again, like you said, every character, it just when if I'm going to just spoil it now. I didn't do a recasting because I don't want to see anyone else do these roles.
Yeah.
Like everyone was so perfectly set. Veronica Cartwright, who I usually can't stand because the screechy, she always plays the screechy crazy one. But this one, it was so held back. You could tell she's like a conspiracy theorist,
Yeah.
and it was just below the surface. It's like everyone had the little things below that were shown early on in the movie that let you know exactly who they are and what you were dealing with. And
Hmm.
I really felt that between Goldblum and Sutherland, and they nailed it. I we'll get into it as we go through it, but yeah, huge fan of this movie.
Yeah, Tony. It's just the whole tone of the movie is just, oh man, it's like it goes places that most horror movies don't go. It almost has like a 70s drama feel to it, like Taxi Driver, so real world. Oh, it just engulfed me in its fucking thickness, like a thick gumbo. Delyn, had you seen this movie before preparing for the podcast?
Okay, before I saw the podcast, I had only seen this movie in bits and pieces. I had never sat down and watched it from beginning to end. I knew exactly what the movie was about. It's you can't be involved in any kind of pop culture spaces and not understand what Invasion of the Body Snatchers is about, even if you haven't sat through the whole thing. Um,
Right.
but I had seen many of the, cornerstone scenes, the ending scene with him pointing and all that stuff. But I had quite a bit of an appreciation for it because I didn't really know where things were going to go from moment to moment. So, yep, I had not watched it in its entirety, but I have now.
Nice. All right, let's do a couple of quick facts on this. So, number one, they had to set Donald Sutherland's hair in pink hair curlers for 3 hours a day to get that beautiful curly lock of 70s hair.
Oh, that's not natural. You just
No,
ruined my image of the man.
no. Robert Duvall plays the priest who swings in the beginning of the movie.
I know, right?
Yes,
I
and
sat there going like, what is he? Is that Robert Duvall as a priest with no lines?
yeah, well, he
What the?
had just been on a movie with the director before this one. I can't remember which one it was. He was in the area at the time. So they said, if you do it, we'll pay you with an Eddie Bauer jacket. And that's exactly what happened. He swang in the swing and they gave him an Eddie Bauer jacket. So I thought that was pretty cool. I mean, it's like we were talking about with these actors and how great they are. I mean, fucking, you can't even replace the priest swinging on the fucking set because it's Robert Duvall. So good.
I mean, he's pretty much fresh off The Godfather at that point in
Yeah.
'78, right?
So
Yeah, I
good.
think so.
Yeah,
I mean,
so good.
Jesus.
Yeah, it's really good. And he looked, and again, tell me he didn't look like that could have been a scene cut from The Exorcist.
Oh,
Yeah.
totally.
I mean,
I mean, that's the thing about this film is it encapsulates. Is that even the word?
sure.
Captures. I'll go with that.
Okay.
It captures the dark, gritty feel of the '70s darkness. It's like The Exorcist, the Taxi Drivers. It's the grimy, gritty, unlit corners. It's the scene in the bookstore.
Right.
The lighting in the scene in the bookstore. That's a '70s
Yeah.
scene. It looks, the fashion, the lighting, the levels, the colors, the furniture. It's just a snapshot of that creepy, scary, in search of kind of time,
Yeah.
Yeah.
with Leonard
Yep.
Nimoy right there. It's
Yep.
like perfect.
Yeah, Tony, you know what? It also, like, if I had to relate it to a modern movie, it really reminded me of The Joker with Joaquin Phoenix. That kind of spooky, dark, like depressing. Oh,
Depressing is the perfect word for it.
yeah.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah,
That's a good
real
one.
world feel. Just good. Which is why I just love that five rewatch movie, The Joker. Go watch it. Dylan, do you have any facts on this one?
So, you pointed out to me when we were watching it, that Leonard Nimoy had this kind of really douchey, like, archery glove thing
Oh,
on, and I was
Yeah.
like, "What is that?" So I checked it out, and, it was a thing like, he had a friend who had a burn on his hand and was self-conscious about it, so he wore a glove just like that, so he did that just because he kind of thought it was a quirky thing that a weird author might do.
Mm.
And the other thing is I don't know if you noticed how often they show the Transamerica building in this movie. It's
Yes.
over and over again.
Yes, the first shot.
Yeah, and it's
First
over and
shot.
over again. Like there's a scene where Nimoy and Sutherland are talking, and it's right in between the two of them. And this movie was made by United Artists, which is affiliated with Transamerica. So they basically product placed their own building in the movie, which I thought was clever.
They did, but it's such a beautiful piece of architecture.
Yeah,
It's like when you're zooming in on it, that first shot. I mean, obviously, it's supposed to look like a modern day
yeah.
pyramid. It's fucking great. It's
It's
fucking great.
beautiful and it's immediately recognizable. So I've got no problem with them putting it in. I just thought it was amusing how often they kind of made it happen.
Yeah, and what's funny about that glove, like you said, so what it was actually meant to represent was you had it mostly right. It
Mm.
was supposed to represent that he had carpal tunnel syndrome
Oh, I didn't
from
see that.
being a writer. Yeah, from being a writer. So, but it was just fucking cool. Like, give me an archery glove in black, please. Okay. Okay. So let's go into a quick fast five. I think this one's kind of clever. I actually had two I was going to let you choose from, but I'll just save the other one for next week. So this one's going to be scary quote showdown. I'm going to give you two scary quotes. You guys are going to tell me which quote is scarier or spookier. And Tony, I'll go to you second, and you can also see if you can tell me where you recognize them from. You may not
oh
recognize them.
Oh, he's
They're not
coming
all
for you.
necessarily, yeah, they're not all necessarily from
wow.
movies, but I suspect you'll probably be familiar with all of them. So,
I'm getting back at me with that David St. Hubbins comment. Jesus Christ.
okay. Okay. So, number one, death has come to your little town, Sheriff. Or real vampires don't nibble on the necks of young virgins. They tore people to pieces and sucked the blood out of their chunks. Dylan, which one's cooler?
The second one.
Okay, and Tony, which one's better?
Oh, the first one.
And do you recognize these quotes?
Halloween is the
Yep,
first one.
correct.
And I don't on the second one. It sounds like you made it up, actually. What was it?
I don't know. I didn't write it down. I just figured you know. Well, no, because you knowing was only just added on at the end. That wasn't really part of this fast
No,
five.
I'm
So
and I want to know because like the chunks part got me.
yeah, it's from a Dracula movie. Obviously, I think it's from one of the old ones.
Okay, yeah, those are all blend together.
Yeah. Okay. Number two. Oh yes, there will be blood. Or no tears, please. It's a waste of good suffering. Delin.
Oh, yes, there will be blood.
And Tony.
Waste of good suffering.
Yes.
Hellraiser.
No tears, please. It's a waste of good suffering. That's the better of the two. That's the correct answer. And it's Hellraiser?
Hellraiser.
Very nice. Very nice. Good job, Tony. Number 3, sometimes dead is better. Or we all go a little mad sometimes. Dylan, which one's scarier?
Sometimes dead is better because I recognize it.
And Tony.
Sometimes dead is better.
And sometimes dead is better. And Tony.
Pet Cemetery and Psycho.
Yeah.
Oh, nice. You got them both. Nice, nice. Okay, number 4. Last night I saw upon the stair a little man who wasn't there. Okay. Or the last man on earth sat alone in a room. There was a knock on the door. Dylan, which is spookier?
Oh, the second one's spookier to me.
Okay. And Tony.
Second one.
Okay. And the correct answer is the last man on earth sat alone in a room and there was a knock on the door. And number 5. When there's no more room in hell, the dead will walk the earth. Okay, that's pretty, that's a gimme. Or, Wendy, darling, light of my life, I'm not going to hurt you. I'm just going to bash your brains in. It's a tough one. Dylan, which one's scarier?
Jack Torrance is way scarier.
And Tony, which one's scarier?
Just to piss you off, the first one from
Yeah,
Dawn of the Dead.
The first one's way scarier, I think. And I think that first one's one of the best lines ever written for a horror movie. So there you go. Fast 5. It was a little janky, but I'll take it. Box office. With a box office budget of $3.5 million and a box office return of $24.9 million, which was a shitload of money back in 1978, this was considered a huge success. And now I will give you a little synopsis. When strange seeds start to drift to Earth from space, mysterious pods begin to grow and invade San Francisco, replacing the city's residents one at a time with body doubles. So there you go. I improv the end of that.
All right. On an unidentified planet, a strange life form in the shape of gel-like spores drifts up into the atmosphere, where it moves slowly through space, drifting until it reaches Earth. The spores enter the atmosphere and are swept downward, emerging in a rainstorm in San Francisco. On the ground, the spores begin to develop, growing on leaves of earthly plants and taking the shape of small pods with pink flowers in the middle. Elizabeth Driscoll notices one of the pods, taking it back to the home she shares with her boyfriend, Jeffrey. Unable to find the flowering pod in any of her botany books, she hesitantly identifies her new find as a crossbreeding of 2 different species. I loved the practical effects that they used for this. Like, oh yeah, they probably could make something really cool if they wanted to use the CGI, but this looks so organic. You know, they're using that reverse technique with the camera and rolling the tape back, and it just looks so good. Like, I was very impressed for 78, especially.
Yeah, the opening like shot of the alien on the not in space, but when we see it on Earth on the leaf, I thought it just was beautiful. You know, pulling the string, reversing the film, it's all just so good. So yeah, the opening shot felt kind of like, and this is funny, kind of reminded me of The Thing when we watched that, and you get the little flying saucer, same basic idea. So the opening shot felt like an old episode of Star Trek, like a TV episode for me. I was waiting for the Enterprise to like shoot across the screen. It never did. But in my opinion, because I hadn't seen this in so long, so in my opinion, it was that tone that set me up for the gut punch. Because once it zooms into San Francisco, oh my God, it's so powerful and real world creepy. It's perfect. The music that this guy is providing me, the soundtrack, it fits these scenes like fucking like an archery glove on fucking Leonard Nimoy's hand. It's so fucking good. I'm immediately uncomfortable watching this. I felt like the priest was an alien based solely on the shot from his point of view on the swing. And this is the first of many shots like this. Like, the guy got so creative with the camera. We're going to get to some other ones later on, but like, you're almost getting like motion sickness for this little swing. I fell in love with the look and the tone. The cinematography is just, oh, it's the fucking charm of the flick. And it turns out that it is supposed to be, he's the first infected human in San Francisco. So that was what they intended it to be, but they kind of wanted to leave it for you to determine.
he's also doing the stare. He's doing the stare at
Yeah,
her. So
correct.
it tracks that he is already
Yeah.
infected.
Yeah. And finally, we're going to get the subtle stares from the background characters. And it sets the tone of the movie throughout the entire thing. And it's a slow burn. We're going to get it. You're going to see it build up a little more, a little more, a little more, till finally the whole city's basically staring at him. And I was watching what was going on in the background at all times, just like you guys said with fucking Clue. Only I wanted to see it this
Just light
time.
that fucking fuse, man.
Tony, go ahead.
No, that's where I was going to go, is the fact that you never see anyone staring at a camera in movies. They're always staring to the side, but this one, that's how they've got the paranoia off. It's like everyone staring at the camera, like you're looking through the victim's eyes. So you're literally, and I mean, no one likes to be stared at. So it instantly puts you at unease situation. And that's what this whole movie is that everyone that are they normal? Are they not normal? Everyone's just staring at you, and you're trying to figure out, and they're all emotionless and they deadpan.
Yeah.
And yeah, you're right. This is a movie that I watch the background more than I watch the regular characters, because you would see the pods being crushed in a garbage pan, or someone carrying a bag that was a little too overstuffed, and you see the furry stuff hanging out of it. They're all put there for someone to notice, but you don't, because you're too busy watching Donald Sutherland trying to pick up, Brooke Adams or whatever her name is, and it's such a great fucking movie of the subtleties. The whole plot is a sledgehammer of plot. Boom, this is what we're doing. But it's the subtleties of this movie that make it truly terrifying about who's who, where am I, who can I trust, which is the ultimate fear. It's the fear of giving, of you're not in control anymore. You're the only one left on a ship full of danger. It's so scary. But I agree. The intro alien scene with the red lights and the floating, it's like, dude, that's totally Star Trek. Lenny Nimoy called in a few favors, said we need the studio. Let's just do it.
I thought it was a great choice to over develop the characters too, and not just give us a character development, but to break it down to, like I said, the small idiosyncrasies that really sold the history of these characters with each other, specifically between Eric and Matthew and
Elizabeth.
Elizabeth. They just sold it to me that these two have been friends for a long time and had a lot of history, and that happened very quickly.
Matthew Bonnell is an inspector for the health department who uncovers unsanitary conditions at a French restaurant. As he threatens the owner with indictment over finding rat droppings in the food, the other employees quietly slip out to the parking lot and smash Matthew's windshield with a bottle of wine. Matthew is cold and calculating, refusing to let them see his frustration at finding his car vandalized. And when he gets home, he calls Elizabeth. They work together at the health department. Matthew jokes with her about what happened to him at the restaurant. As Elizabeth goes to bed, she forgets about the weird pod, which is suddenly spreaded roots in the glass of water she keeps next to their bed. I loved how nonchalantly Matthew deals with the broken windshield. He's just kicking on the windshield wiper and drives away, just like, fuck you, don't care. But I also loved that this becomes a device that creates this mood as the story unfolds, because you're looking through the broken windshield. So you're looking through cracked glass continuously, both looking at them and them looking out. And then on top of that, he comes into play later with the mirror, like that mirror in the bookstore where they're all distorted and deformed in it. And he does
So
this a
good.
couple times, and it's so good every single time he does it. But the windshield specifically, I was like, oh, he did that on purpose. Like, that's not even just part of the story. It's to make you feel uncomfortable.
It's fractured reality. Yep.
Yes.
Perfect.
Yeah, that scene that you're talking about, man, it's like you're gonna shoot a scene with Donald Sutherland and Jeff Goldblum where you could watch the scene in the room, but you're not. You're watching it through this distorted mirror,
Yes.
which is like he's dragging you into that mirror while everything's going on. Oh,
Well, it takes up like three-fourths of the screen.
it's so fucking clever. So this whole scene with Donald Sutherland going to the restaurant in the beginning of the movie, this is my favorite sequence in the movie because this is where I'm gonna meet Matthew. And oh my, right from the first shot where I see him through the peephole, um, I'm loving this character. This whole caper versus rat turd argument, it's money, it's gold. I'm falling in love with the character. I can't take my eyes off of Donald Sutherland. he owns the screen, and he puts this movie on his back because this movie couldn't pull this pace off unless you cared about these characters the way that you do. And I can't get enough of his character. So for me, it's an Oscar-winning performance by Donald Sutherland, and he can just give me as much as he wants. And I'm just like, yes, sir, give me more. Give me more. Give me another 10 minutes. Keep going. I want to be his friend. I want to go to his apartment and have him cook me fucking stir fry and just sit with him in a sweater and talk about life. Like, yes, Donald Sutherland. Yes, I love you. And when we see Matthew and Elizabeth on screen together, it's magic. Their friendship, their romantic feelings that are simmering just under the surface, which they give you so obviously, but so subtly at the same time. It felt so genuine to me. I'm eating it up and I am immediately buying this fucking romance and this friendship. 100% line sinker, done. Tony, what do you got?
No, you nailed it. It's I love the restaurant scene as well, just because watching it this time through, he knew where he was going. He knew what he was looking for. I almost wondered, like, did he plant it? Because he knew he was kept looking around, looking around, looking around, and he pulled it up. It's almost like he knew that was in there.
Yeah.
He had to search for it. So it almost makes you wonder if he like targeted this restaurant and they've been dealing with him back and forth. Again, unspoken history that doesn't need to be there, but it put questions in my mind. So that shows how good the scene was. It made me wonder about a backstory of a fucking throwaway scene. It's not a throwaway scene, it's the introduction to his character, but it's a throwaway scene of what he's really doing. It just introduced, yeah, I'm a health inspector, but there's so much more to it. I do love the fact that he totally, Dalton from Roadhouse, whatever. You're gonna break my car. I got another one. It's no big deal. I'm gonna pull out of here. I started to, as much as I loved him, I started to start questioning, how does he know all the people he knows? He's always on the phone. I got a guy. I got a guy. I got a guy. Like, he knows. How does he know Leonard Nimoy? How does he know Jeff Goldblum? They didn't really establish those, but they're such. All three of those are so like. How does the health, maybe the health inspector met the guy with the mud bath because he had to check out the mud baths to make sure they were sanitary, and obviously Jeff Goldblum is a writer as well because he knew the books of they knew each other's books with Leonard Nimoy.
Right.
It's just a weird connection, but you bought it because all of them
I
sold it.
never questioned it.
Right.
Yeah, no, I never did, but I think that they did a good enough job of establishing that Matthew was a government official, basically. San Francisco is one of these towns that has, I mean, if you're in the inn, you're in the inn, and these people are all, kind of big dogs in San Francisco. And yeah, I think he's just, rubbing elbows with these people in different spots. And yeah, I agree, Tony. I think that he had, I'm not saying he was necessarily a crooked inspector, like looking for kickbacks and stuff, but it is obvious when he walks into that restaurant, everyone's staring at him. They're not aliens, they're staring at him because he's been fucking busting their balls. And it's not his first time in that restaurant.
Yeah.
And it's probably not his first windshield,
Yeah.
So it really worked for me. And yeah, I think you might be right. I think he might have dropped that in there, but we're going to get a later line where he says, "What does this look like to you?" And she says, "I don't know, caper."
Right.
So is it a caper? And he's just busting their balls? I don't know, but I love it. Yeah. Go ahead.
All right. When Elizabeth wakes the next morning, Jeffrey is already awake and dressed, cleaning up the remains of the glass of water next to the bed, as well as some ashy mess on the floor. His behavior is so strange and unusual. She follows him downstairs as he takes a plastic garbage container out to the waiting dump truck. At work, she confides to Matthew that Jeffrey's acting strange. Later that night, Elizabeth tries to talk it over with Jeffrey, but he ignores her, instead telling her that he's going out and gives her no explanation about where he's actually going. Elizabeth touches him and recoils from his emotionless response. Elizabeth rushes over to Matthew's house and insists that Jeffrey is no longer Jeffrey. On the outside, he looks the same, but inside, he's different. Matthew hears her out, but obviously doesn't believe her because it sounds pretty wacky. However, the next day, when the owner of the Chinese laundry he frequents says his wife is no longer his wife, he starts to wonder about the coincidence. Later, he finds Elizabeth at the health department, shaken and obviously distraught. She reveals to him that she's been following Jeffrey during the day and has seen him having brief meetings with strangers, all of them passing unidentifiable packages amongst themselves. She's convinced that there's some sort of conspiracy afoot and that Jeffrey is part of it. So this is around the time that they start doing the thing with people just staring at them. Like, they're walking down the hallway in the Department of Health and everybody is standing and staring at them. And it creeped me out immediately. And I was like, I gotta be honest with you. If that was me, I'd be like, what are you looking at? Like, I couldn't help myself because it was so much. Like, everybody's just standing on the side of the hallway watching them. And like, she definitely does give it a little like, oh, what's that? But I would have been a lot more concerned about all this weird staring, but it's done to make you uncomfortable and it worked.
Yeah. So it was funny when I'm trying to write this movie up and I'm trying to watch it for this podcast. I'm trying to do it like I'm watching a horror movie and I want to talk about the story and the scares and stuff, but that's not what was standing out to me. So, like in this opening scene, and what it is going to all come down to is the depth of the characters, the depth of their interactions, and the way the movie looks and feels, the tones and the sounds, the soundtracks that just are creating this overall vibe
Right.
to the movie, which is what it is. So in these opening scenes with Jeffrey, I love how he feels slightly checked out of the relationship with Elizabeth, but he's still showing interest in her in a physical way. Cause he'll take the headphones off and be like, you want to screw around? And she's like, I'm kind of tired. He's like, all right, fuck, he puts the headphones back on. She's like, I'm reading here. Can you just I don't want to listen to your fucking game. So he puts the headphones back on. No sex, fine. I'm checking back out. And it felt like she was settling for a relationship of convenience to be with a handsome dentist. Like she knew he was a good catch, but she didn't have that like soul feeling she had with Matthew. And this made me love that relationship that much more because they were allowing me to be her relationship with her boyfriend against this potential relationship with her friend that she's obviously not pursuing because Jeffrey is this handsome, good looking catch. So I felt like she was settling to be with the trophy boyfriend. And again, just great. The scenes with Elizabeth and Matthew in this apartment, again, this for me, it's like macaroni and cheese. It just feels good. It feels genuine and warm. Pure gold. Um, Doing the eyes with the eye wiggle thing for her. Well, if you're not crazy, then prove it. Do the eye thing. This is something they've done before together. And it felt like it was, it just felt like something that they had between them. And I was buying it. And the scenes of Elizabeth following Jeffrey around the city, having that narrated having the shots narrated with her talking to Michael.
Matthew.
Oh, Matthew, so good. And then finally, the scene at the dry cleaners. Perfect slow burn to draw Matthew into Elizabeth's conspiracy theory. This is where he's going to start to say, all right, maybe there's something to this, the real world feel, the over the top acting, so rare for a sci-fi horror movie. This is late 70s drama and I just love it.
The Chinese laundry lady does that crazy stare and she's walking with like the plastic touching her face. I was like, oh, bleh.
Oh,
Yeah, that's where it's going to go. It was another veil between reality and something creepy, whether it's broken glass, whether it's
mm-hmm.
a window, whether it's a reflection. You're never close to it, and there's always something separating you from it for the beginning of the movie.
Yeah.
Everywhere she's following Jeffrey, it's far shots. It's far shots. It's above. It's almost like she's looking off a rooftop. Even when she's behind him, she's up a staircase. She's on a balcony. And when Matthew is trying to figure it out as well, and see if something is this any reality to it, he's got his again broken windshield.
Yeah.
He's got the plastic between him and the wife, so he can't really see what they're trying to get at. There's still a veil of secrecy over it all.
Right.
Yeah.
And no, it does. I loved the boyfriend. I love the fact that Jeffrey was emotionless to start. Even if what little bit of emotion he showed, it wasn't that far off from when he actually turned to an alien.
Right.
So you could kind of justify it.
Yeah.
That was the only person we got to know that we saw turned, and we still couldn't tell at the time. You could justify it.
Right.
Yeah.
Everyone else is like, well, maybe, until it boom, blows up in us in the mud bath. But we'll get to that.
Well, what was so smart about the writing and the director with this Jeffrey character was, it seems like they had a kind of like a fun teenage relationship. Like you could tell they had good sex. You could tell that like he was this guy that loved to, watch the fucking Golden State Warriors. He would spring for the big tickets for the playoff games and take her. So like they were having fun together. He was a good character. But what was so interesting was that was how the director told me when he was 100% nailing. He's like, I gave the playoff tickets to a client. And she's like, oh, fuck you. Who are you? No fucking way. You gave those tickets up. And I thought it was great. I thought
Yeah.
it was fucking great. Yeah.
Yeah.
Matthew wants to take her to meet his friend, a renowned psychologist named David Kibner. Kibner has written a number of popular books, the latest of which has just been published, and Matthew decides to take Elizabeth to the book signing party that night so she can meet Kibner personally. While stopped at a traffic light, a strange man, Kevin McCarthy, the star of the original movie, suddenly falls onto Matthew's car, screaming and pounding at the windows. They're coming, something terrible, you're in danger. Before they can react, another vehicle comes along and strikes the man dead. Strangely, the crowd of people around him seem not to be infected by what had happened at all, not even the motorcycle policeman who arrives on the scene. At the party, Matthew and Elizabeth meet up with Jack Belichick, like Bill Belichick, a friend
Yeah,
of
you're big
Matthew's,
better
and
check.
a friend of Matthew's and a struggling writer. Matthew tries to phone in a report to the police about the accident, but he meets with strange resistance. Elizabeth becomes entranced by an extremely upset woman who is insisting to Kibner that her husband is an imposter. Kibner calms the woman somewhat before sending her on her way with her husband, but Elizabeth urges the woman to contact her later at the health department because she knows what she's trying to say. Um, so this is the first time we get to meet Jack Belichick, and he might be my favorite character in the movie, even though I really do like his wife in this movie too. But
Yeah.
so good. Goldblum is perfect. The neurotic writer is perfectly him. And even if he plays this kind of character over and over again, I don't care. I love it. Give me more. I'm going to eat it up every single time.
Yeah, but what's great about this is we're seeing the invention of Goldblum here.
Yeah.
This is what you're gonna see going forward. He nailed it here. We're gonna get it in The Flyer. We're gonna get it in fucking Jurassic Park. And to see him doing it so young, he almost looks like fucking Ralph Macchio. He's so that young here. I'm like, God damn, this is some young fucking Goldblum. So Kevin McCarthy, like you said, he was the original star of the original version of this movie. And this is the exact same line that he is going to deliver in the final scene of the original movie, which led a lot of people to say, is this a reboot or is this a continuation of the original? He's aged appropriately. He's, maybe been hiding from the aliens the whole time. He's been doing the thing. And, he recognizes these two as H type, as humans. And he's calling out to them, run, stop. And then, he's obviously killed in his effort. So for me, I'm going to go ahead and just run with this is not a reboot because for me, it just makes it feel that much better, just even more clever and amazing. Director said, make your own decision. Probably not, probably a reboot, but if it suits you, go ahead, run with it. So I'm running with it. Scenes at the book signing, again, so stylish, so beatnik, and again, Tony, so San Francisco, like you're going to get this mix of different people from different parts of society at this, and that's how these people all know each other. They get out. It's not 2024. Everyone sits in their house and looks at a device. They're out. They're mingling. They're fucking getting it going, and I fucking love it. Um, we're gonna get some interesting stuff that's gonna happen throughout the movie, and again, this goes back to Clue, and it does make me kind of appreciate what I missed in Clue because I see it happening here, and maybe I just wasn't tuned in enough to see it in that movie. But you're gonna get a scene here where you've got Goldblum's character, Donald Sutherland's character. They're all talking at the same time, and I'm listening to Goldblum. I want to hear what he's saying, but there's a whole nother conversation going on here. And then you can actually even hear Nimoy spinning his bullshit on the other side of the room. And it's just like, choose your conversation as if you were at that party.
Yeah.
And that's drawing me right in. Nimoy, as our main antagonist in this movie, being presented to us originally as the voice of reason. So he's going to be the voice of reason, explain everything away, try and keep you feeling comfortable as the viewer, even though you know everything's off. A good friend of Matthew's, continuously, just gaslighting. It's really good until finally they're going to hit you in the face with a 2x4 and give you the reveal. So just, yeah, I'm in. Tony, talk about it.
Love the Kevin McCartney thing. To have him back was a nice little, that's him.
Yeah.
Funny thing, when he died, he's laying on the ground, he's covered in blood. My son's like, could they not afford to have good blood in the 70s? I'm like, no,
It
they
was
didn't.
very red.
He's like, it was because I took him to see Dawn of the Dead because I'm a good dad,
Nice.
to see the original 1978 Dawn of the Dead at the movies a couple of weeks ago, and he's like, they were just great people with red stuff on them. It's like they look terrible. I'm like, it was the time.
Yeah.
So he's just like, there's that blood again, Dad. I'm like, yeah. Um, so I mean, I love that he's just laying there and literally people are just around him staring. No one's calling, no one's running, no one's screaming. It's just a disturbing scene of just quiet, because he was the only sound. Like he was this, and then it just, you hear the bump. It was weird.
Yeah.
Like really well done sound design on that one. When we meet Goldblum, the exact same feelings. Like he just bursts into the room, bursts out of the scene, and he's just talking right away about how terrible and shitty this book is. Matthew's trying to call the police to report the accident. You're trying to pay attention to him. Goldblum's talking about something totally different. You hear Nimoy, you hear the woman freaking out to Nimoy. So you're trying to pay attention to that so you don't miss it. And they literally are all have this dance. No one's really stepping on each other's line, catching all of it, but it's so disjointed, but such a beautiful weaving of the character development, the story moving forward, and the paranoia all set in this one 3-minute scene. You get
Oh,
all that information in that short amount of time. So fucking well done. Love it.
it is.
And then you also have people in the background that are doing the thing where they're watching and then they're looking at each other and then looking back. And it's like, oh, God, they're already them, and they're there and they're looking at who's still H type,
Yeah, and the director's been doing this over and over again. We've seen it at the health department. People doing things weird, people staring through doors. We're seeing it in the restaurant
Oh,
where
the guy
you're getting
behind the door. That's the worst.
yeah,
It freaks me
Oh
out.
yeah.
it's so good. And at the restaurant, same thing. You're trying to focus on this capon fucking argument, but there's so much going on in the background with these chefs and sous chefs and the way they're staring at Donald Sutherland. They've seen him before. They hate him. And it just this goes on through the whole movie. It's genius.
Finally, Matthew is able to introduce Elizabeth to Kibner, who admits that over the past few days, other people have been coming to him with the same story that Elizabeth is telling. The patients tell him that somebody close to them is acting strange and seems like an imposter. The patients seem to get over it rather quickly, though, and just change their story. Kibner suggests that it's just a result of emotional isolation when people are in modern relationships. But even Matthew notices that Kibner doesn't seem to actually be listening to what Elizabeth is saying. Matthew takes Elizabeth home and she finds a pink flowered plant waiting for her with a card indicating it's a gift from Jeffrey. Oh boy, Jeffrey. We know what you're up to. Jack returns to his wife, Nancy, who runs a mud bath facility. As Jack goes to relax in the steam room, Nancy interacts with a strange patron named Mr. Gianni, who's just giving her a plant, just like the one Jeffrey left for Elizabeth. When Nancy begins closing up for the evening, she notices somebody lying under a sheet and thinks it's Jack. Removing the sheet, she's startled to find a strange form underneath. It resembles a man but lacks distinctive figures and is covered with white tendrils. Jack suddenly appears and Nancy strikes him accidentally, giving him a nosebleed. And the shape on the table begins to bleed too. They call Matthew and urge him to come over to examine the phenomenon. And when he realizes something terribly strange is happening, he runs to get Elizabeth, suddenly believing her suspicions. Matthew goes over to her house, and while Jeffrey sits listening to his headphones, Matthew breaks in and retrieves the sleeping Elizabeth. Before taking her from her bed, Matthew is shocked to see a duplicate of her body laying nearby, covered in the same fibers as the body at the bath. So I loved Veronica Cartwright as Nancy. I think she's fantastic because she's got that little bit of like Tony was saying, the conspiracy theorist thing. Like she's the only one. Like everyone's like trying to take a nap, and she's sitting straight up, like constantly. She's terrified. She knows something's going on immediately. Um, I also loved how they did these two scenes with Matthew in the closet, and she's in the bed, and Jeffrey comes in to check, and you get Sutherland moving his head in, and it's like the stark, and then like he backs out, and then they do it again. I was like, they gave it to me twice.
It's the
Yeah.
it's the Black Christmas eyes.
Yes. Yes. Exactly. Um, yeah, the quick scenes outside of the book signing where Kidner's trying to gaslight Elizabeth, and she's just not buying it.
Yeah.
She's like, and eventually she sees what's going on and she starts to gaslight him right back. Oh, yeah, maybe you're right. Maybe he is my husband. Maybe I'll go back. Bullshit. She fucking knows there's something going on. And like you said, this shot, it's so psycho. It's so just classic, like Black Christmas. Like you said, it's just good horror shot of Jeffrey just creepily listening. And I love that they go as far as to even have Matthew go, Jeffrey, you there? It's like, it's so fun. They're almost joking that this might be going on. Like, oh, maybe he's hiding around the corner. Ha ha ha. Well, he is. Then we're going to get this another amazing location. Location is the charm of this movie. This mud bath spa, it's fucking balls on, man. It is perfect. The lighting, um, oh,
The green
fucking
plastic like shower
yes,
curtains that aren't the same color throughout. So
yes,
perfect.
and fucking I love this couple, this beatnik couple. I mean, this could have been set in Greenwich Village, New York. This couple is so great. They're so late 70s, early 80s. Oh, I love them. And they're, again, this is a couple that I care about. They're making me care about these characters. I'm going to be sad when fucking Jack finally sacrifices himself. I'm going to feel for her when, it's hidden that her husband has died and, Matthew just doesn't want to break her heart. Oh, we've got hope. We'll go. It all means something. Um, so the suspense, this creepy feel of the mud bath facility, it's brilliant from the lighting. The idea of sitting in somebody's dirty mud, like it feels so dirty, it feels so unclean, like this movie. And they're making you think of these things, You see this fat guy get out. He's obviously naked in that mud bath. And I try to imagine like cleaning it or renting it after him and sliding into his. Oh, it's
Blech.
gross. Then we get this really weird, uncomfortable slap massage on his sweaty, full, hairy body. And the whole thing is just, it's amazing. Tony, what do you think about this?
There was way too many adjectives in that scene for me
I know, it's a
for me
lot.
to like what you're talking about. I was like, I zoned out there for a minute. But yeah, I need an adult. Um, I going all the way back to the Nimoy scene. I mean, Nimoy's just got this his voice. I mean, there's a reason that the Museum of Science uses his voice in documentaries because it's up there with Morgan Freeman as like this identifiable authority that you can almost fall asleep to. It's so soothing. But his face, the way he delivers that soothe, if you're watching his face, it's emotionless in the scenes he's doing. You hear the inflection in his voice, but his face is dead, and it's just he did it so well. Like you want to believe him because your ears are telling you, yeah, he's right. But there's something about the way he carries himself. He's lanky, he's tall, he doesn't move normally, so it puts you off of him, and he was the perfect casting for it. The whole Jeffrey, Jeffrey is what Jeffrey is. I got nothing more to say about him. He's just a robot. It is what it is. Having the mud bath scene, I gotta focus on, as gross as it is. That was my first. I was like, what do they even do here? Like, what is a
Mm,
mud bath? I am uneducated. I'm happy to be uneducated about it. I'm sure it's a massagey kind of soothing thing.
mm.
Yeah, I don't know. It's gross.
Draws
Either way,
toxins.
how do you know if somebody's down there? The bubbles are coming up. Is that a ventilation thing? Is someone living under there? Is someone dying under there? We don't know.
Yeah.
I love the fact that again we first meet Veronica Cartwright. She's dealing with this. She's dealing with like the angry fat man who's just wah, wah, wah. So you see she's a calming influence. She knows how to handle herself. Then you get the bearded intellect man. I have this book for you. She's like, oh, I've already read it,
Mhm.
and she repeats back like this quote from it. It's like I couldn't even follow.
Yeah.
So you know she's well written, well read, and very smart.
Mhm.
Again, 30 seconds, you've established who this character is, what they're like,
Mm-hmm.
what they do, and how they're going to handle the rest of the movie, and you know why.
Mm-hmm.
Because of just those two little interactions. Um, and when she finds the body, fucking terrifying.
Yeah.
Yes.
It looks scarred, it looks burned, and I had no recognition that was even supposed to look like
Yeah.
Jeff Goldblum. It was supposed to be his replicant, but I didn't even see because it didn't have his nose, it didn't have his hair. Those are
Yeah.
the two things that
Still forming though.
Um,
Still forming because later in the movie we'll
still
see
forming.
that they
Yeah, it's
do finally capture all of the features.
right. But when they pull that thing back, and again, you get the swinging light. It's Friday the
Yeah.
13th. It's the shower scene Friday. You get the swinging light. And just the shadows. Those 70s fucking bad lit scenes of shadows. They do so well.
Yeah.
And just I love everything about the mud bath. All of it.
Me too.
Yeah.
So good.
Dude, we're just going from one amazing location to another, and I just feel at home in all of them. And again, maybe it's because I remember this from being 8, 9 years old. It just feels familiar. Love it.
Mud baths, huh?
Yeah.
He spent a lot of time in the mud baths.
That's where the hey, did you ever see that movie Christmas Party is going to be held?
You get in after the big fat guy.
Yep.
I'll be the big fat guy.
I'll be Jeff Goldblum.
Oh my god. All right, everybody. Back at the bath, Jack falls asleep again and the body begins to take on his features, even opening its eyes until Nancy wakes up Jack. Matthew and Elizabeth return to the baths and summon Kibner, but the body is apparently vanished. Likewise, Matthew reports Elizabeth's other body to the police, but when they return to the house she shares with Jeffrey, there's no body to be found. Kibner quiets the police, and Jeffrey seems unconcerned that his girlfriend refuses to come home and is spending the night with Matthew. Converging at Matthew's house, the small group forms their hypotheses. Somehow, people are being duplicated, and these alternate bodies are appearing to take their places. Kibner is skeptical and tries to talk them out of their ideas, but finally leaves unseen by the others. He gets into a car with the other two co-conspirators, including Jeffrey. First of all, poor Leonard Nimoy is always getting typecast as a character that has no emotions. It's
Right.
like, oh, duh.
Spock. Yeah.
Spock, he's an alien that has
Yeah.
no emotions. Okay. Um, but also, way that he tries to talk them out of it, I find fantastic because he plays it so perfectly. He never gets overly emotional, and he's just doing the gaslighting thing. He's like, no, it's like this and like that, and like, let me give you a sedative. Everything is okay. And it's like, oh boy, like that's how tricky, sneaky that is.
Yeah. Well, so here is the deep, complex part of this character, okay? He never changes right up till the time they lock him in the freezer and presumably kill him. I feel like this character was a sympathizer. I feel like he was hyper intelligent. They knew that he was plugged in right down to the mayor because it's told to us that he knows the mayor. And he is basically, as a psychiatrist, he's giving these people even before the aliens come, he's being influential to the mayor as his therapist. Maybe you're thinking this is wrong. Maybe you should be thinking this. So I feel like the aliens are almost using him as a pawn, and I don't think that he is ever actually a alien. Just my opinion. I think that when he finally gives um the entire plot and objective of the aliens, I think he's just telling them what it is. I don't think he's actually saying I'm one of them. He's always got his facilities from the very beginning to the very end. There's never any numbness of his personality.
See, I was thinking the same thing this time through. It's like, oh, they obviously have to have some helpers
Yeah,
to keep, to move the sheep.
yeah,
Let's get everybody over
just
here.
like in They Live.
But exactly. But when he's locked in the freezer and he's doing this, you hear the scream.
You do.
So that's why I think he actually was an alien.
Yeah, but he's
That's
behind.
the only thing, because I was on that boat right up until like that ship sailed, and then they did that. I'm like, all right, he's a
But
fucking
he's
alien. Okay,
behind the
got it.
glass and they're running, and I don't know if the scream necessarily came from that freezer. It could have been a misdirect. He just didn't. Because if he is an alien, then they're kind of changing the rules on us. They're saying that some aliens can remain completely human and sell that, and other humans like Jeffrey can't even barely fucking muster a physical emotion. Yeah,
I think it comes down to who they were beforehand, because Jeffrey wasn't that You saw him as playful. I saw him as just a selfish dick.
yeah.
Like I didn't. And when he was like, "Oh, she's coming with me." All right. Well, I guess I'll need to get her some clothes. Okay. It's like, what is a jilted boyfriend going to do in that situation? You either fly off your handle in front of the police, or you do what he did. I've watched enough cops episode to see that happen. That like he went one of the two ways.
Yeah.
So I like that they did play it down, but I felt his delivery was a hurt. It could have been interpreted as a hurt, jilted boyfriend,
Yeah.
as opposed to just that.
Yeah, he's
For anyone
blank.
who in the room who might not have been an alien.
Right.
So
Well, with Kibner, I mean, I think it's smart storytelling and it's going to, provoke some conversation like it's doing. So I think that's, you can interpret it. But this scene with Jeffrey's clone opening his eyes as Jeffrey falls asleep and then reversing the shot with these quick, back and forth. So we're finally starting to see the connection between the aliens and the human host and how it
Yep.
works. And I do like that. But at the same time, they kind of don't explain it enough because they say, they get you when you fall asleep, but you got to be near a pod. Now, so if you fall asleep in a secure location away from a pod, you should be okay, right?
great.
We're going to lose Elizabeth, but we see that Michael, and this is a little later on, but we see he didn't kill her clone. So is it enough for them to have a clone somewhere else to where she falls asleep? And how did her clone get back to where she is when she changes? They kind of didn't
I think there
explain
was a
this.
pod in the grass there, is what I think
Yeah.
happened.
Okay, so see, I kind of felt like when he didn't crush the rest of the clones in that 4 clone scene in the garden, that
Oh,
he
right.
was leaving behind, you know, composites for them to complete when these people fell asleep from whatever location they were at. Once they had a start, they were good.
See, I took it as the fuzz had to be on you to pull the DNA.
But they had already started.
They started, but they interrupted the code.
So those clones die and then they have to start again fresh. Okay.
I
Wasn't
think
really
so.
explained, but I was fine with it.
I mean, I gotta be honest with you. I appreciate that they didn't over explain stuff because I
Yeah.
think it would have gotten boring really fast if they started like breaking it down
Yeah,
and
yeah,
said,
yeah,
this is
yeah.
how this happens. Like they leave it to you to
Yes.
figure it out.
Yeah, no, and go ahead, Tony.
But at the same time, though, where did Jeffrey's clone go? Who took it? It didn't get up and walk away because it wasn't done yet.
Right. That's what I'm
Oh,
saying.
I
So
think
where did it go?
they put it out in the trash can because there's a point she goes to the window and
Oh yeah,
there's
yes.
But who did?
Kibner did because he's
yeah, because
standing
Kibner
there.
goes in and he
Yeah.
goes, I don't see anything.
Yes.
But
I
when
Oh,
he
so
walked in there, it had been there.
yeah.
so he just chucked it out the window
Yes.
again.
Yes,
Yes.
and I
'cause-
think the trash guys picked it up and threw it in the back. And then she was like, "That window's open," and they make the point of showing
Yeah.
the trash
All right,
guy right there.
Yeah.
So
And
I missed that part
and
of it.
some
Okay.
people complained about how the trash people were always around. But here's the thing: if you're converting an entire city and you have control of the city, they just put the whole trash works on it 24/7. They're like the whole force, just go out there
Oh yeah.
and let's get rid of the fucking population in San Francisco. Um, I love how Nancy knows at this point that fucking Kibner is totally full of shit. Like she's just now at this point not buying it all. Um, and she's gonna figure out the trick to survival. And I love this character. She turned out to be the strongest, most, she was a survivalist. She had it, and I loved it.
she became the last man standing, as far as we
Yes,
know.
yes. Well, she is the final girl in the movie,
Yeah.
unless what I said, my ending sticks, which I'll give you at the end. Um, so this back at Elizabeth's apartment, this interrogation where the police come and Matthews, and so you stole her then. Well, I didn't steal her, I rescued her. Well, so this one scene, you see how frantic the camera work is. It's zooming for one person's face, zooming out. So this was all done with one handheld camera. And they thought it was going to take forever, but the director just took a camera. He stood in the middle of the room. He said, go. And he just started running around and throwing it in people's faces. And it was just another ballsy cinematic like experiment that this guy was doing, and he just kept doing it over and over. He's like, fuck it, let's just not make another movie, let's just go for it, and if it sucks, it sucks. But it just worked. And obviously here the police force is being completely compromised by the aliens. Kibner is obviously calling the shots now, which is again why I think that Kibner is probably a sympathizer. It's just what I think. And this is where Michael starts his ill-advised habit of calling the police over and over again until they finally say to him, hey, stupid, we're the aliens. Just sit tight and we'll come kill you. Like,
I didn't give you my name. I
yeah,
didn't give them my name.
yeah, and yeah, it's a little bit of a problem. It's a little bit of
Yeah.
a problem.
I loved how when they went back and he reports a body, and when you look down, it's like
Yeah.
a pot and it looks like a face. It was like that's so fucking clever that they
Yeah.
did that, to be like, maybe it was dark and you thought you saw her.
It's
But
so
nope.
good. It's so good. Obviously, Jeffrey had arranged a couple of flower pots to look like a body, but it didn't even matter at that point because the fucking police are on the take.
It didn't matter. Yeah.
I mean, and the subtleties that as you go through it, knowing where it's going to go, everybody's constantly drinking water.
That's
Water.
the other thing.
Everybody
was drinking water like crazy.
Because they're plants.
At the end of it, when you see her finally go, it basically sucks all of her out and it dehydrates her until she becomes a husk, literally a husk that they're going to throw in the garbage cans with all the other dusty things. So that's why the new plants got to keep hydrated, new plants got to keep watered.
Yep.
It's just as you're watching, literally from like minute 12 or 15 of the movie, water coolers are going, everybody's chugging water, everybody's by something. It's just so subtle, but when you go back through it, it's like fucking
Yeah,
genius. God, I
Tony.
love that
The
stuff.
humans are food. The humans are food. It's fucking amazing. It's amazing. And if you blink or you get bored, you'll miss everything.
All right. All day, Matthew tries to get help because, like an idiot, he's calling everybody and saying, "Here I am." He tries to reach out to anyone that can help, but he has very little success. The upset woman from the bookstore turns up at the health department and tells Elizabeth that she's all right now. That night, the Belichicks decide to stay at Matthew's. Kibner gives Elizabeth a mild sedative, because of course he does, and leaves when she goes to fall asleep. Everyone falls asleep except for Nancy, because Nancy's the only one that is really on the ball. As they sleep, four pods in Matthew's garden release white tendrils that attach to the sleeping people and then release embryonic life, somehow duplicating their victims. Before the transformation is complete, however, Nancy wakes Matthew. Matthew tries to call for help, only to realize they're already onto him. The power goes out, and a wave of pod people are on their way to his house to gather them up. As the others escape out the back, Matthew smashes his duplicate in the head with a hoe, because he's not having that. Near the docks, the groups appear to be cornered behind a group of shipping crates, but Jack sacrifices himself, rushing out along the dock and getting the pod people to give chase. Nancy does not want to let him go by himself, so she runs after him, and Matthew and Elizabeth are now on their own. They attempt to take taxi out of town, but the sinister looking cab driver drives them to a police roadblock that is arresting people trying to leave the city. Matthew and Elizabeth find that they cannot escape San Francisco. The pod people are everywhere, even spreading pods right out in the open, as they're now apparently outnumbering the humans. Um, so the action is really getting moving here, obviously, but there was a couple of scenes that I felt like maybe it was a little drawn out with the running. Like after they get out of the cab, there's like a 25-second scene of them just running down a street. And I'm like, okay, we could have cut that down just a little. And it's a nitpick. It's a nitpick, but I feel like you're building this tension. Let's not let it wane because you're elongating these scenes that don't, like, get them around the corner to that, the hawker, like where they're in like the red light district.
Yeah.
Like, let's keep it moving, right?
Yeah, it was weird. There was this that one scene you're talking about. So, she twists her ankle, she falls asleep, and then immediately they're kind of running through the city, and people are
She twists her ankle later.
well. At one point, they fall asleep before the red light district. She does.
Oh, I don't know where.
Yeah, it's just this whole scene started to feel a little bit like a dream sequence to me. I actually asked myself, are they dreaming? Is this still part of the movie? I was a little confused. I mean, it was fine, but I agree, Dylan. The pacing was a little bit off at times, and the movie felt like it maybe needed just a quick edit and just be trimmed down just a little bit. And I think some of the running scenes were where I would have trimmed it down a bit. Just get us to the locations a little bit quicker. It wasn't a problem for me, and I thought the pacing actually worked better the second time I watched it because I started like looking at the movie more deeply. So I wasn't kind of I wasn't really
Anticipating.
looking for that like modern horror movie that just was so easily spoon fed to me. Like I was challenged to find story.
Yeah, and I love the way that they shot all of it. That was the thing is like it was never like it wasn't like a Lord of the Ring. Oh, we're fucking
Yes.
running again. Oh, here we go through the
Yeah.
mountains. It's like you could have just taken this scene, insert scene A into T. It's just they were interchangeable. This one, it was you definitely had the locations there, and
Hmm.
they shot it with like shadows, and then there's close-ups of feet
Yes.
running, and then there's against the wall 3 or 4 people. You never saw identification of who was chasing them. It was just anonymous. So it literally could have been anyone, which goes along with the paranoia of this whole thing that they may be the only two people alive. And just when they turn that corner, now we're going to walk to try to blend in and be cool. It's like who is, who's not, who's right, who's wrong. The paranoia is just like intense. Like they're going to get found out. Oh, they're going to get found out. And then we get the dog face.
Oh
But
no, the poor
well,
dog.
it's like that's where that's the one thing in this entire fucked up movie. That's the one thing I'm like, wish they didn't do
What,
that.
the dog?
I know that they like the dog with
I
the
loved
human
that.
face.
I loved that.
I did too. 8-year-old me loved it. Me now, it looked terrible.
I
It took me it took me out of the movie. It's not a paranoia thing. Now it's a
I
monster
couldn't
movie.
disagree more. I thought it looked phenomenal. I know it was just a latex mask on a dog with a little peanut butter so he'd stick his tongue through the hole in the mouth. But for me, it was jarring and it was a lot of fun to see that the pod had only been partially damaged and was so close to the two, the dog and the banjo player, that it just,
He got confused
and
and
I just
created
think
that.
that's so great. And it happened before the thing. And it just makes me believe that it helped create some of those ideas we got in the thing. It's just so good. It's
I can't argue it what you're saying because I do see both sides of it, but it's the one thing that felt jarring out of the
but that was
regular.
but that was the charm of the scene, Tony, because they didn't rely on the scares visually. We were getting this all these scares through creepy storytelling and dark lighting and shadows and looks. And I really wanted, just give me just something. Give me one thing where I just go, okay, this is great visual sci-fi. And that for me was jarring. Like you said, it was, oh, what the fuck is that?
To me, it was the flower opening up, and here's the center of the flower. Unfortunately, the flower turned out to be this mutated head of a fucking being being born out of a fucking pod. That was my visual. I didn't need a latex mask on a dog. Watching these things being born out of a plant and growing and undulating, and the soundtrack of the whoa, 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 whoa was just
Yeah.
all of it together. That scene, again, made my friend leave the fucking theater, and me being terrified, pushing myself back into my seat. I didn't need a dog. The dog I almost laughed at when I watched it again. I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot about that. That was
Uh,
funny. But the fucking the birthing scene, that was the
Yeah.
highlight of this entire movie
Super
for
yeah.
me.
gross.
So I see your point of it. I do appreciate the idea it presents that it didn't get a chance or it was too close to both of them, so it cross pollinated both of them because it couldn't differentiate. I do like that because then you get the fly, you get the thing, you get all of it. I just felt they took that out, it would have flowed straight through. And it was just it was a speed bump, nothing that broke my car. It just made me go, oh fuck, what was
Yeah.
that? All right, well let's keep moving.
But it happened in such a frantic scene that I really, for me, it happened right in the middle of this complete like mob mentality, crazy scene, and it served as the device for one of them to break their faking being aliens. I mean, it was so jarring. The scream came out and it gave them away. So for me, it was just yes, please. Again, Michael's continuing to call the aliens, aka police, and so I kind of wish the character wasn't so trusting and unaware at this point. It didn't fit with the sharp inspector that Matthew was in the beginning of the movie. I felt like he was starting to get a little gullible at the wrong time
It's a good
in the
point.
script. I mean, by now, this guy wouldn't be calling the police anymore. He'd be like, "We're on our own here," but he is. The scene with the group falling asleep is great, but again, Michael's making crucial mistakes. I get why you couldn't kill Elizabeth's clone because it looked just like her and he's in love with her. But, he takes the time to stomp his own clone's head and then just leaves the rest of them. It's like, dude, fucking stomp the fucking heads of these things. Your friends are in there. What are you doing? But he just leaves them all like that. And then he calls the cops again and they're like, oh, is this Matthew? He's like, I didn't give you the name. And then we get this, this iconic line from Goldblum, hang up the phone. Hang up the phone. And I'm screaming, hang up the fucking phone. So good. So good. Okay. Okay. Let's keep rolling.
Taking refuge in the dark offices of the health department, they find speed pills in someone's desk drawer and take as many as they can in order to keep themselves awake, because that won't give you a heart attack. However, they're found
Yeah.
out by none other than Jack, who has returned with Kibner, and both of them are pod people. At least as far as I'm concerned, they are. Kibner gives them both a sedative, and he explains that they will be reborn into a new world without emotions or complications thanks to the alien life form that has taken root on Earth. But Matthew and Elizabeth manage to overpower the both of them, killing Jack and locking Kibner in a freezer. On the way out of the building, they encounter Nancy in a stairwell. She's still human. Nancy reveals that she and Jack were separated, but she's discovered a way to move among the pod people by not showing any emotion. The three of them leave the health department right out in the open, but Elizabeth is startled by a bizarre pod hybrid that has mutated into a dog with a human head. An elderly pod lady notices it and makes a high pitched scream, which seems to be the way the pod people call out to each other about a human in their midst. Nancy once again gets separated from Elizabeth and Matthew, who are identified as human and chased throughout the city. So I actually, like it was funny because they kept showing the banjo player with the dog. And I was like, this is going to be a
Mhm.
thing, like clearly, because they made a point of showing him several times. Both her and Matthew were interacting with him, and I felt bad. They stop and they're like, "Hey, wake up!" And she's like, "There's a pod there." I'm like, "Oh," but then she kicks it or he kicks it, and that's why I think you get that mutated dog guy. I mean, honestly, for '78, it wasn't bad. I mean, it wasn't fantastic as far as special effects go. I think some of the other special effects were far more um, just pulled off better. But I didn't hate it. It was so quick. It happened so fast that it was already over by the time I actually kind of put two and two together what I saw. So
Yeah. So we finally get the confession here from Kibner, and we get the alien objective and what it's all about. He's just going to spell it all out for us, which is fine. I mean, I loved it. I mean, give me the rules of the universe. I want to know what's going on. Great scene. The power couple's gonna fucking kill these two with darts and fucking and beakers. It's fucking great. He's gonna lock them in the freezer. A la The Shining, which was great. I fucking loved it. Um, and again, I felt terrible for Nancy not knowing Jack was dead and holding out hope. And it was gut wrenching because I cared about the characters and I specifically really started caring about Nancy at this part of the movie. I won't get into the dog again. You guys know how I feel about that, but it's funny because the banjo player, his name in the movie was either Gary or Jerry. I want to hope it was Jerry because I only heard them say his name once, and I could have swore he said Jerry. And all the banjo parts were actually played by Jerry Garcia, who was from San Francisco. So he wanted to be part of the movie, and he did all the banjo parts, which I thought was pretty cool. I wish they had used him as the character because he would have looked perfect for the part, but
right.
they went with an actor. But I do think his name was Jerry. And the scene that stood out to me, and I mean, it's such a funny, nothing throwaway scene, but the timing was expert, like ninja timing. It's when they're in the cab and the cabbie tells the cop, he pulls up at the roadblock, and we don't get to see them in the back seat. We just see them as they're pulling up. We see the roadblock and we're like, they're fucked. And the cabbie looks at the cop and kind of gestures to the back seat, and the camera pans to the back seat, and you can just feel that they had just got out as the car was pulling up and the door
Door was
was.
still swinging.
Oh
Yeah.
man, it
Yeah.
was so fucking good. I inside I went, yeah. So it was really good. Tony, what do you got on these scenes?
No, it's great. That was again. You're right. It's a small scene that you just shows how quick they had to be out of there. It was so good. No, I feel like I've already gone over all these scenes. I mean, it bummed me out that Goldblum had to go down that way, but yeah, seeing him come up and then everybody behind him was like, "Oh, really? He didn't get away? Oh, I was hoping he did."
Yeah. Also, how Veronica Cartwright, Nancy, played off, the two of them freaking out about the dog and running, and she's like, and
Yeah.
just stayed in line. I was like, oh, she's so smart.
Yeah. And dude, when Matthew fucking uppercuts that old lady with a Mike Tyson fucking hook, dude, I laughed out loud. Like, you thought the dog was funny and laughed out loud. I laughed out when Matthew just fucking boom dropped her
Shut
like
your alien ass up.
dropped her like fucking Larry Holmes. It was great. It was fucking great. It really was.
All right.
Yeah.
Running out of places to go, Matthew and Elizabeth find themselves on the docks and discover a greenhouse where thousands of pods are being cultivated. Elizabeth, hindered by a twisted ankle and lack of sleep, feels as if she can't go on much further without some sleep. Matthew goes to investigate the sounds of amazing grace coming from one of the ships, leaving Elizabeth hidden among some tall grass, because that's how you get ticks. Matthew is horrified to see huge pallets of pods being loaded onto the ships. The pod people are taking their enterprise globally. When Matthew returns to Elizabeth, he finds her asleep and is unable to wake her. As he holds her in his arms, Elizabeth's body crumbles into a husk, and her nude clone appears in the grass. The pod Elizabeth tells Matthew that everything is all right, the conversion is painless and good. She encourages him to go to sleep, but her voice is hard and cold. Matthew runs, slipping into the greenhouse. He makes his way to the steep scaffolding and after taking a fire axe, begins wreaking havoc among the pods, dropping electrical lighting rigs onto them until the entire place is in flames and the pods are burned. The fire alarm is sounded, and the pod people pursue him, including the newly converted Elizabeth. Matthew slips away from them, hiding under the dock. He hears them talking amongst themselves, and one of them says he can't get far, he has to sleep sometime, and Matthew knows that they're right. Des, what did you think of that?
Yeah. So the final scenes between Matthew and Elizabeth here, fucking heartbreaking. Heartbreaking for me. First, we get some hope with the introduction of the song Amazing Grace playing from the dock. And I mean, it's just a hopeful song, and it's not something that like aliens would listen to. They've already shut the music off all the radio stations because they don't need it, which I thought was kind of a mistake because plants, they say that plants love music. So I thought
True.
they kind of used this in the wrong way. I think it would have been a nice addition to them drinking a lot of water, would have been them playing like classical music throughout the city. Would have been kind of cool because towards the end of the movie, would have got this frantic pace of the movie set to this like really calming classical music, but they decided not to go with that. But I was fine. So the Amazing Grace, I've got hope. They've got hope. It felt so human, but then when he gets up there and sees the pods being loaded onto the ship, it's just a gut punch. And Elizabeth is in his arms, and he says to her, "I love you. I've always loved you." And it's just and then she just crumbles, and this perfect love just turns to dust in his hands, and it's a gut punch. And when Elizabeth fucking stands up and it's okay, just do it, it's fine. And oh man, I'm just like, just do it, dude. I don't care if she's an alien. Just go in the bushes one time before you crush her alien head. I don't know.
Oh God.
um, yeah, it's and then okay, so this last scene where we get Matthew attacking the processing plant. This I probably could have cut from the movie. This is another spot where I think you could have trimmed it down a little bit. I didn't really need this like action sequence. It was fine and I enjoyed it, but I'm fine if you just have him hold her in his arms. She falls to dust. He starts to maybe walk away, and then he's seen by the horde. He hides underneath the dock, and they say he can't stay awake forever. Cut to the next scene back at the building where he works. I would have been fine with that. But we do get this kind of 1978 American, greatest American hero kind of made for TV action sequence. It's fine. Did you guys see when the explosion shoots through the door and he just scoots by it and there's another actor chasing him? That actor was burned pretty badly.
Oh no.
Yeah, he didn't have the timing of the shot and he ran in front of the door and you can see him get
Wow.
fucking torched. They left it in the movie. He grabbed
Yeah, I
his
saw
hand.
that. I wasn't sure if that was meant to happen or what. I figured
Yeah,
that was like,
no.
oh, that's how they get rid of the character. But
Yep.
no, that's
That's
terrible.
how they got rid of the actor. They didn't have to pay him.
Oh no. That's
um,
awful.
okay, so here we go.
All right.
Tony, did you got anything else on these scenes?
No, you nailed it. It's
Yeah.
really what it comes down to. It was heartbreaking. And you're right. I think that the whole action scene, as much as it was fun to watch. It was harmless. You got to see the destruction of the pods and how gross they were, and slimy and shooting out and bubbling over and boiling in the
Yep.
fire. It wasn't. You could have cut it to half and got the same points across.
Yeah.
I felt like when we got back to him in the office, forgot about the entire end of that.
Yeah.
That is he playing? Is he not? Like I completely. I'll let you get to that, but
Yeah.
like I totally zoned on that whole ending. I just thought it just cut right to him outside the building with Veronica Cartwright.
Yeah. Me too.
But anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, Tony, hang on quickly, Tony. I wanted to say a couple other quick things though. I love that they're saying now that once they get San Francisco infected deeply enough, that they're letting people go and visit relatives out of state and bring pods. So they're delivering pods to family members and stuff now, like under the like, oh, I'm going to come visit, and they come to visit and they set up these little pods in the house, and this is how they're going to spread this. They're going to spread this across the globe is by just
Hmm.
letting people go out. And there's another great scene where Michael's in an alley, and this is a little earlier in the movie, and we see they're unloading all these pods into the back of a building. They're going to show the front side of that building later, and there's a school bus coming, and they're bringing all the children into the front door, and it's really dark. It's really dark, and I just had to bring it up. So
Yeah, no, that was a scene where I was like, "Oh, that's kind of icky."
yeah,
But and you can tell the kids are still kids because they're
Yep.
screaming and running around and doing the thing that the kids do, and
It's
they're not
heartbreaking.
pod people yet, and they're going to be soon.
Yeah, stealing
So
our humanity. It's a fucking
yeah,
heartbreaking plot. Go ahead.
yeah. All right, so the next day, Matthew goes through the motions of his job, staring blankly at his coworkers. He sees Elizabeth in the hallways of the building, but they do not acknowledge one another. Outside, Matthew sees school buses of children from Santa Barbara, LA, and other areas of California being taken to a theater for their conversion. A while later, Matthew is walking along a deserted street towards City Hall building and hears a voice calling to him. Turning around, he sees the still human Nancy across the street. As she crosses the street to meet him, Matthew's face twists into a grimace and he points at her, screaming an alien scream to alert the other pod clones to her presence and birthing 1,000 memes. Nancy screams, realizing too late that Matthew is now a pod person as the camera zooms into his mouth and the screen fades to black.
Nice.
The end.
Okay. Go ahead, Lynn. What are your thoughts on
Oh,
the end?
yeah, I was just going to say that, like you said, the thing with the kids was like a little disturbing. And it's like, it has to happen because that's what they're doing, but it's kind of gross. And, yeah, poor Nancy. She's the last woman standing. She thinks that she's found Matthew and she's going to get him and they're going to get out of there. And nope, he's done. And it's sad because it just means that she's probably going to get caught at this point too.
Okay, so just like Clue, I've got 3 endings for you. Okay, I'm going to give it to you very quickly. Okay, so here's how this movie ended. It's one of these 3 things. So earlier in the movie, we see Matthew clipping newspaper stories. We've seen this already once in the movie. Did this back when we know he was still human. So we see him clipping these newspaper stories at the end in his office. It's a very human thing to be doing. It's not something a pod person would be doing. They wouldn't show no interest in these. Okay, so we see him doing this. He still feels human to me. We also get 2 scenes of him watching Elizabeth, once in the lab and once getting into the elevator. She's obviously devolved even more into the alien because she now no longer even recognizes him like she did back at the dock. So she's losing all of her humanity now, and she's almost just a complete zombie like the rest of the people in that lab that are literally just staring up at the ceilings, which again has to bring you back to Kibner. It's just too stark of a contrast between him and all of the other people we know to be infected. But I digress. So everybody in that lab now is completely almost a mindless zombie. So I submit that maybe he's still human at this point, but he realizes his true love is completely gone now. Elizabeth doesn't even recognize him anymore. All hope is lost, and he gives in to the aliens off screen. We don't see it. And this is before we see him turn on Nancy. So he has now said, there's nothing left. My friends are all dead. She doesn't even recognize me anymore. So, I mean, there's not even a chance that we can be together in any aspect of the way. So he gives in, he lets them transform him. Flash forward to the scene now with Nancy, and she says, Michael. And he turns, oh, and we get that. End of movie. They're all aliens. Everybody loses. End game.
Except
Second.
she called him Matthew because that's his name.
Oh, fuck you. Second possibility is he is an alien the whole time. And then the final possibility is she says, Matthew. And he goes, oh. Then he stops because I'm just fucking with you. I'm still human. And they escape. But that happens off screen. We don't see that. And they save San Francisco. Not likely.
See, I thought that's where you're going to go with the first part, because if he's clipping newspapers in the lab, it's a human thing to do. So he was pretending the whole time
Yes.
just to try to survive. And even at the end, he turned on her just to keep his cover.
Possibly. I love it. Well, there's a 4th ending there, right there. Perfect. This is great. It's great that any of these endings work. I love it because this is what happened in 1978.
The original is so good.
Yeah, in
the original,
1978,
it's just so dark.
People left this movie theater and they were having these conversations on the way home. Like, hey, he was still human, right? Oh, fuck you. He was human. He was totally an alien. And then you're going home, hashing this thing out for another 45 minutes on the drive home. This fucking movie is badass. It's badass. So, you guys, any other thoughts on the end?
No, I'm good.
Okay.
Classic.
All right. Quick recasting couch. I would replace Art Hindle, who plays Jeffrey, with one Kurt Russell. Yeah.
Oh, poor Kurt Russell.
Give me Kurt Russell.
Just for the hair.
Well, just to connect this with the thing that much closer. I think it would have been a great. I honestly thought that he was the weakest actor in the movie. I thought the only time this movie even felt a little bit B-70s horror was when Jeffrey was on the screen as an alien. It wasn't a super inspired performance by him. I think a better actor could have pulled it off better. So that's what I got.
Okay.
Dylan, what do you got?
Well, initially, I was going to replace the girl that plays Elizabeth with Karen Allen just because she looks so much like her, and because I know how much you hate her and think
Oh,
she's ugly.
dude, it's funny because when I was watching this, I'm like, wow, was she beautiful in 1978? Yeah, I almost confused the actresses a little bit, but this
Yes, I
actress is gorgeous. Oh,
yeah. But I would replace her still with I think honestly I think she was kind of the weakest link in the crew. I think everybody else was so fantastic. I
oh,
mean,
fuck you.
think about it though. Think
No.
about it. Is Donald Sutherland better than her?
Yes.
Is Goldblum better than her?
No.
You don't think Goldblum was better than
No.
her?
No.
Okay.
That's a lie.
When she
You're
That's so
smoking
flickers
wrong.
crack.
when
You're
she
smoking crack.
no, when she flickers her eyes at that dinner,
Oh,
that's
please.
magic.
Just
It's
because she
magic.
can do a stupid trick and they made her use her stupid human trick in the movie? Come on.
I fell
What
in
did she
love with
do
her.
after this?
I
What
fell
did
in
she
love with
do
her
after
in that
this?
moment. Stuff.
The Dead Zone.
Nothing.
Dead zone.
Okay, well, she did the Dead Zone. Jeff Goldblum has gone on to have 1,000 things under his name, including Marvel movies. So,
Go ahead.
I'd replace her with Sissy Spacek because I think that she would have that little ingenue kind of,
Ugh.
wide-eyed thing.
Yeah, then I'm not in love. Then I'm not in love with the character anymore. No thanks. Sissy Spacek. Stop that.
I like it. This is her heyday. This is Carrie. This is right around that time.
Yeah, I don't like her.
Would have
I'm not,
elevated the movie.
I'm not even remotely attracted to her. And part of the charm of this character is she's fucking
Oh,
beautiful.
because she gives you a pants tent.
Because
Got
you're
it.
gonna fall in
Okay.
love with her. No, because I'm
Pants
falling in love with her through the eyes of Donald Sutherland. She's too good for
Big
him.
eyes of Donald
Yeah, the
Sutherland.
big, beautiful eyes of Donald Sutherland.
Meanwhile, I could not understand why she was attracted to him in the slightest, especially with that red fro.
Dude, because
Oh,
because that man is fucking human Valium. Like, if you're near Donald Sutherland, life is good. Like, there's nothing wrong.
To stir fry
Yeah.
all the time.
Yeah, you're eating stir fry, you're drinking wine, his sweater is warm, it's all good.
I mean, think about him, man. He did the same thing in Animal House. He had the sweater at the stove,
Yep.
except he had no pants on.
Yeah.
You know, it's like
He actually shot this movie at the exact same time as Animal House. He was actually going back and forth between sets when they did
oh,
this.
that's funny.
Yeah. Yep. All right. Lynn, you did it. Tony, you said you didn't want to do it.
I have nobody. I actually think this was like the perfectly cast movie.
How about we
Okay.
just swap out the pod in this with the pod in Alien? Is that fine?
There you go. Put an egg for a pod. There
Yes.
you go.
Okay. So we got eggs instead of pods. Nice one, Tony. I like that. Let's do some final thoughts and we'll score this thing and log it in infancy. Infancy? Infamacy. What?
You
Okay.
can see.
All right. So,
Infancy
Tony.
and the baby.
Tony, I want you to do it first because I want to see where you're at. I want to test the temperature of the room.
Oh no, this is I was thinking about it. I'm like, I hate to give it such a high score. I mean, but it earned it.
Yeah.
For a '70s movie. I mean, there's not many '70s movies for me that stuck out and had an impact like this when I've watched them recently. Obviously, the classics. You know, you got the Godfathers, you got the Taxi Drivers, the Deer Hunters, but those are on a different level. This is schlocky. This is low, but I don't even want to say low budget, but it's considered like a genre movie.
Mm-hmm.
But man, this holds the look, the feel. It nails everything it sets out to do. There's very few movies that don't stumble along the way, and this had very few stumbles all through it. I mean, the cast was great, the look was great, the soundtrack was great, the story was pretty tight all the way through it. I'm a renewed fan because I never put this one even close to my talking. So when you said, "Hey, why don't we do Major's Body Snatchers?" I'm like, "Oh, I remember liking that. Maybe that'll be good." And I watched it, and I sat there just blown away. So I mean, I'm gonna definitely give this a pretty high one. I'm gonna give it a 4.95.
Nice.
It's
Ooh.
really good.
Yeah. Okay, good. Delyn, go ahead.
My score is not as good as that. I can't go there. I still enjoyed it though. It's better than average. I'm gonna give it a 3.86.
Okay. And this movie for me, just absolutely amazing. The acting is next level. The ideas presented are just so deep and thought provoking. The cinematography was brilliant. The soundtrack was brilliant. Some of that heartbeat stuff, that was actually the sound guy had recorded the baby in his wife's belly.
I meant to bring that up.
Yeah, and turned it.
That was my one piece. I was like, it's yeah, it's a
Yes. Yeah. Sonogram or whatever that is.
I can't think of what it's called. I totally
Yeah.
zoned on it after my two kids.
Mammogram or
No,
whatever.
it's not a mammogram.
A pap
It's when
smear.
you put the booby in the
It's a
machine.
pap
There you
smear.
go.
Oh God, help
Um,
us.
yeah. Yeah, that's it. I mean, it was great. That's it. Trim it down by 10 minutes, 20 minutes. It would be perfect. So my rewatch score is going to be right there with Tony. I'm going to go 4.90. 4.90. That's mine. It's important. It's an important movie, I think. Yeah, so there it is. I had 4.69 my first watch, and then the second watch, I bumped it up.
See, I just bumped it up because the more we talked about it, the more I didn't. The more you reminded me how important the word you use is important. You're right. It influenced so much after this. I mean,
Yeah.
granted, it's based on the '50s movie, which is based on a novel, but
Mhm.
all of that coming from the communist paranoia and the red, it's
Yeah.
just historically updated, and it continues today. If you remade this today, you can get a good cast. You could tell literally the same story with the same themes.
Yeah.
It's so good.
I mean, Tony, if that scene came on with him going into the restaurant, you're going to watch it again, right? And
Oh
just be
God,
like,
yeah.
okay, yeah,
And
yeah,
I'll
okay.
sit through the rest of the movie now.
Yes, yes, okay, me too.
Okay, so it came in at number 14 on our list. It's right under True Romance and right above Big Trouble in Little
Nice,
China.
nice. Interesting. I mean, yeah. I mean,
I'm
I
okay
think,
with that.
I mean,
yeah,
it's you have to think like the ones that are above it, we're talking like the big hitters, you got your Beverly Hills Cop, you got your Deadpool, like all those movies are right above it. Boondock Saints is right above it too. And then right under it, you get The Warriors, The Lost Boys, Back to the Future. So it's right in the right place.
yeah. I mean, it's tough when you're doing genres. It's tough with genres. I mean, obviously,
Yeah.
Back to the Future is better than this. It just is, but it's in a completely different genre. So, I mean, the list is the list. The list is just for fun. Some of these
Oh yeah.
some of these don't fall where they belong, but it was fun. Okay. Next week we will be back with Pat, where we will be reviewing Better Off Dead. Better Off Dead. John
Oh,
Cusack vehicle.
love that
What's
movie.
worse, to speak no English at all or to have learned it from watching Wild World of Sports? I don't know. You choose.
Tentacles
And
and T, big difference.
that's
Tentacles.
right. That's right. So that's it. Tony, thank you for joining us. Lynn, as always, it's fun watching movies from different sides of the condo and then discussing them on this program. So until next time, I just have one question for you. Hey, did you ever see that movie? See you next time.